So in my left hand is a text from Mohammed. Mohammed says he can't make it tonight. And he texted saying, "Hey Mike, really sorry, can't do the podcast tonight. Can you give a shout out to Japan Sinks 2020? I'm halfway through it and it's really something. Every episode is like watching the end of Old Yeller."
The opinions expressed in the following are those of its participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the producers and the Six Talk Podcast Network. Also, the following contains mature material and mild language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
So, Mike, is that the reason Mo isn't here? He's watching Japan Sinks? Or is he watching Old Yeller?
Well, everyone says it's quite an emotional drain, so I guess we know how it's affecting him.
So does the dog die at the end? Did he just, spoil all of Japan Sinks?
I think he spoiled just about every episode, which has me curious about it. I'll admit that much. Well, at least we know what his recommendation is.
I guess we could say that Old Yeller, the anime, that's our recommendation.
Wouldn't that be hilarious?
You want to hear the funny one that kind of gave me a chuckle? I think maybe it was announced before, but I saw it today that supposedly one of the next Netflix original animes that they're working on is in collaboration with Ubisoft, and they're going to do a Splinter Cell anime.
Oh boy.
Really? Wow.
Yep.
This could be good or bad. This could go either way. I really don't know.
Well, it did well for Ubisoft in the aughts. Remember that? It felt like it was everywhere. Then it's just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
But they still are doing the Tom Clancy stuff, so.
Well, that's a theme, I guess. Like things that you thought have disappeared from like a decade ago, and then somehow they reappear again in some form. And episode 21 begins on this final night of July, Friday, July 31st, 2020. Just a quick reminder that if you have any questions and comments, we're always up for hearing from whatever listeners we have. AnimeRoundtable@gmail.com is our email address, @AnimeRoundtable on Twitter and Instagram, and if you care, AnimeRoundtable.com for the show notes and archive, and the Discord, which we don't really hang around either, but hey, leave us a message. Also, do us a favor and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts, because hopefully those reviews are good, and maybe we'll get a few more people knowing about this show. So once again, the Anime Roundtable has gathered, such as it is, albeit virtually. Mike Nicholas at 6 points, James Austin and Kevin Ng not at 6 points, and Mohammed Shamarki, as now noted, not here at all.
But hey, at least all of us are now in stage 3.
Oh yeah, well let's talk about that in a sec. Let me just quickly finish up the intro. This is the longest we've gone without doing a recording since we started doing recordings during the pandemic. So it's been 21 days since we actually recorded, but listeners probably wouldn't know it because that last episode went up more than 10 days after the fact. So who knows how long the turnaround is going to be on this one. Yes, July 31st marks the beginning of stage 3 for Toronto, coming out of the pandemic. Stage 3 in Ontario is defined as a little bit more open. If you work in restaurants and bars, the indoor portions of such places are allowed to open now, and they are limited to, I think, maximum 50 people, with physical distancing rules still applying. It's a big step. Gyms are allowed to open. Movie theaters are allowed to reopen. I think, from what I remember, Cineplex Odeon has been given clearance that each individual theater, not complex as a whole, but individual theaters can be maxed out at 50 each. whichever ones they choose to open. So this is a significant step here in Ontario that's happened today. Well, not Ontario, because a lot of the province has already been in stage 3, but Toronto and Peel region, which is the western suburbs of Toronto, Mississauga and Brampton, they went into stage 3 beginning today. The only area in Ontario that has yet to emerge into stage 3 is Windsor, Essex, so way out west, right at the in the vicinity of Detroit. There's been a number of issues there concerning migrant workers working on farms, and that's why it remains in stage 2. Neither of you have been out today, have you?
No, I was out because I had to retrieve a shoe that I needed to get cleaned, and I had to go to Toronto to retrieve it
Out of all
during
places.
my lunch break because.
Or where was it in the first place?
Sorry?
Where was it in the first place?
It was in downtown Toronto.
At a friend's?
No, I had to. So I was at home, and I had to drive to Toronto to pick it up at a shoe cleaner slash cobbler's place
Okay.
on Toronto Street, and his hours are very inflexible for me. So this Friday was the only time I would have more than an hour to go and pick it up, and it was a little. The drive was a little frustrating because traffic is largely back in full force in Toronto.
Yeah, I've driven around a little bit and heard the traffic reports enough to know what's the difference now. There seems to
So
be a lot of traffic going around.
So now there is a lot of traffic on the eastern portion of the Gardiner because they're doing the bridge construction near Jarvis and the Don Valley, like right at that where the Don Valley and the QEW intersect.
Basically the eastern edge of downtown.
So that's where yes, and that's where a lot of the traffic is coming from now, and below the bridge is also very heavy. So that was not fun. And also, I don't drive downtown too often, so sometimes I envision how I want to get to my destination, only to discover that I hit a one-way, or I hit a point where I can't enter the street, because Simcoe, if you go north, you get blocked off at Wellington, you're forced to turn left.
I know what you're talking about.
And I had to go right or go east. So,
Yep.
and this is why I tell myself I should be using the Google Maps directional thing.
Just make sure your phone's charged.
Yeah.
Like,
I knew better, though, to be honest. I knew better. I just forgot about it because it had been months.
All's well that ends well. You got your shoe?
Yeah, and it was a very tough cleaning job because I actually had some blood in the heel, and that was a tough job. It's definitely a job that I couldn't do on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I knew that even after I clean it, it won't look the same as when it did when I bought it. But whatever. What's done is done.
Well,
it's a lot cleaner. Yeah, it's a lot cleaner than I could have done.
That's good news, huh? James, I know you've been holed up all day.
Yep, I definitely have been holed up all day. It's like, I kind of went outside, but I didn't go inside the property line, that's for sure. Like, I've been crazy today.
Well,
that's how it goes, right?
Sure. I think aside from stepping out to run a quick grocery errand and buy lottery tickets.
Is tonight the night for you, Mike?
Doubt it. Honestly speaking, doubt
it.
It's
like, it's like we're just never going to have any more episodes, and you know what? Everyone's going to assume you won the lottery. You won the 50 million or whatever we're at now.
Yeah, if we never... Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, if you never hear from me, that's where you're going. Finish the line.
I was going to say, if we never hear from you again, we understand.
Okay, thank you. Well, The New York State Lottery back in the day, I think it was in the 80s, they had this phrase, this marketing campaign for their lottery games. All you need is $1 and a dream. We're way past the dollar days for lottery tickets. I'll tell you that much. $5. But that's the story of my day. That and Yakuza 0. Still on it, but I'm light at the end of the tunnel. We'll talk about that a bit later. But let's get to the business at hand. Hopefully this episode will go up in a timely manner after maybe a couple days after its recording. Last weekend, however, was a key weekend here in Toronto if you were an anime fan. Actually, a key weekend in all pop culture, because two major things happened, if you care. One's the rather obvious one. Comic-Con had their convention, albeit online, of course. Many things to talk about there. The other thing that happened was Anime North. They had their online presentation, albeit 2 months late. Momiji's online experience also happened, and we're going to talk about both of them, at least the things that stuck out to us as we watched both of them, bits and pieces, over last weekend. Where do you want to start, gentlemen? Do you want to start with Anime North? Do you want to start with Comic-Con?
We could go either way. Comic-Con, there was only so much, I believe, so.
Well, there's only so much that we cared about.
Yes. Well, I'll admit I was too preoccupied by Yakuza for most of the weekend, too. So I only saw so much. I think I saw, well, I can easily say I saw more of Moe. I can't believe I said that. I think I can safely say I saw more of the Anime North programming than Comic-Con, which is almost none. I had to depend on your links, Kevin, to see what some of the stuff that was said, and we will talk about some of those videos in just a bit.
Most of us watched it through the not the live feed, but I'm not sure how if they did a live feed for Comic Con, but they must have and stuff like that. But obviously, we had to watch the live feed of Moe.
I doubt it, because I clicked onto one of those a little early, and I don't think it was live. I really don't.
It was well edited, I'll tell you that.
So it might have, because some of them, and I think they probably have done for some of the film festivals where they have the links beforehand, they have everything set, and then it says this is the time it's supposed to go live. And some of them, I think, even say this is when it ends.
And I wouldn't doubt that. Actually, let's talk about these pre-records, because honestly speaking, that's sort of the story of a lot of what was seen at Momiji's online experience. Momiji's online experience happened from the Friday to the Sunday. It's typical Anime North hours, beginning at Friday 6 p.m. last week. The exact date was the 24th. Yes, July 24th, beginning at 6 p.m. 6 hours worth of programming, roughly, and then 12 hours of programming on the Saturday, and then a final 6 hours on the Sunday. They sound like typical Anime North hours, actually. And it was, I think the first impression, not really first impression, but the easy blush I could say, having watched bits and pieces, it just felt like a typical way Anime North would have done things. It just had the Anime North feel that many of us who are familiar with the convention had always had. Which is to say, it had the fairly educational, philosophical aspect to it. Something like, it's not all fanboy, but it's remember the joke we always made about Anime North panels? You come away learning something more often than not, and that's how it felt.
You also had the game shows, the way they've done them and stuff like that. So they had like different sects of their programming represented there in the over the weekend. And as they said, they waited because they wanted to get everything together and get it done in a way that people would like remember and feel like they were at the con, which I feel they successfully did and stuff like that.
I think they did a good job in that sense, but I think they were hard done because of the timing. Obviously, it didn't help you that you were going against Comic-Con at the same time, but I don't think they cared. I don't think that part really matters, to be quite honest with you.
And most of it was they had it all in the front, so it was something to give back and stuff like that. And most of the people that probably would have come are people that definitely would have been to the convention, stuff like that, and know Anime North. And it seemed like they seemed to get some good numbers. They were in the hundreds for viewers and that for a lot of the
They
weekend.
did average like a couple hundred each time, I think. What was the peak number you remember seeing on the Twitch stream? Because it was on Twitch.
Yeah, I was watching on Twitch. I can't remember, but yeah, it was close to between 175, 200, thereabouts.
So that's not horrible by any
But
stretch.
it definitely, there were
Eh,
some times where it dipped below 100 on certain
Well,
ones. So.
I didn't think of it as horrible.
I don't think that's very good, to be honest.
You don't think so? You
I
don't think it's
don't.
good?
I
One
don't.
175. I would kill to have 175 listeners, by the way.
Well, yeah, that would be great for us, but we're talking about the fourth or fifth largest anime con in North America.
Well, it has me thinking, are we now at peak online convention now? Are
I think
we becoming convention?
Possibly. But
Like,
here's the other thing. Anime North has never been very good at marketing, in the sense that we don't, like, when we get those Japanese voice actors as guests, they're half the time they're not mentioned on ANN. You'd think that somebody in the marketing team would send the press release to ANN, and then you would generate a little bit of buzz, and then people will know, oh, this guest is coming, so maybe I could consider going to the con, or maybe I would consider flying out to Toronto. But if you don't hear about it, you don't know. And how many people would really know that this was going on in the US?
so, who
yeah,
knows?
because there was definitely the initial announcement and stuff like that, and there was stuff on the website and probably on the Twitter, but beyond that, you're right, there wasn't much of made.
Well, you had me thinking about the history of, or at least the recent history of Japanese voices at Anime North, because those announcements have been known to be made pretty close to the convention itself.
They're made in April most of the time, and that's
Like
not always enough time for people out of province or out of the country to make preparations to go to the con.
like I said, cutting it close.
Truth be told, Otakon is not always great at that too, but
I guess it
usually
depends on the contracts.
they make other announcements much earlier on anyway, so it that helps.
Yeah, and you don't think that Anime North has the stockpile of announcements to really generate enough curiosity before, say, a big announcement comes in? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, usually you would well, here's okay, let me start again. Usually if you've finalized those contracts, you would want to just announce it ASAP. So I suspect it's more like the contracts just don't I just assume that the contracts are not finalized until April for some of those.
Okay.
That's what I suspect. I don't know anybody that deals with that stuff.
Frankly, neither do we totally. Even though obviously, like we've said, we've known a lot of people on staff, but we don't know always the ins and outs. But it's a fascination, I suppose. Okay, well, let's talk about a few of the things we saw on the Anime North stream. First impression I had was, first of all, it was a single channel. When we talk about things like the other conventions 3 weeks before, like Funimation Con, like Aniplex, like Anime Expo Online, those shows actually had multiple channels, multiple rooms, so to speak. I think 3 or 4 each time.
And Otakon this Saturday is going to have multiple channels as well. And I guess that's the thing we talk about is it is very fair run stuff like that because it was just through the Twitch channel. It was
And it
just
was
the one room, the one account that they had from the social media team. So,
and it was a single channel. It felt like, say, anime lockdown, but a little bit, but even more polished. And really, that's not a knock on lockdown because that was very much thrown together and well done for what it was.
and that was live too, whereas this one they took that time that they looked for the submissions and stuff like that.
That's
And
a
some
key
of them
thing.
were a half hour and stuff like that. So they had to be real polished to get those fan panels done. And then there was some live
You
stuff with the
actually
game shows and certain things.
you actually did hit a key point. The panels themselves were all pre-recorded. They were done in, by and large, 30-minute blocks. The odd time you would get the 1 hour presentation, but by and large they were 30 minutes, and they were almost the majority of them were pre-recorded, unless of course it was the Q&As and the game shows. Game shows are a big highlight at Anime North, and the production team there that handles the game shows these days did show up, and I don't know how they went,
And the
but it's
404s showed up as well live. They supposedly have been doing shows at different cons virtually and stuff like that. So it was interesting seeing them try to pull that off. They did some interesting stuff, even though they were all scattered to the four winds.
I don't know. Saturday Night Live can pull something like that off. Surely the 404s at least can take notes. It's not as if they're really polished themselves, but I'm sure they figured out something, and I guess it went over well. I don't know for sure because I didn't get a chance to watch it.
You know, I've enjoyed watching them and stuff like that, and I thought they did a good job for the time slot they had. They were the Friday night,
Yes, they were. So
but they are a staple of Anime North since the early aughts. So
yeah, they have become
Mhm.
that way. They've been around for how long? Better part of 15 years, I guess. Maybe more, give or
yeah,
take.
close to 20 years, I think. So
Okay.
20 to 15 years in between that period, and it was definitely Anime North. I feel like was the kickstart,
For them.
and then they went
Well,
to some of the other cons like
they've been
Sakura
around.
Con
Like
and all across Canada.
I don't know. Like I have to check their history again, just to be sure. Like where because I can't. I'm not sold. Anime North was was such a big thing. They were somewhat big before they did the Anime North stuff, didn't they? Or they were somewhere before Anime North. That's my memory anyway. Can't say it's all there, but they were around kicking around before their association with Anime North, and yeah, they're very popular without a doubt. Kind of kind of latched on to the craze of improv comedy that would have existed around the time they came on the scene, and they've come into their own for sure. They're certainly quite the thing watching them now. Okay, so first of all, let's just quickly ask. I have to ask this question: did the 30-minute format work for you guys?
It was fine.
Nice and digestible?
Could have been a little longer for some segments.
Yeah,
I
I feel
think
like
I think Dave Merrill could have been an hour for Anime
Uh,
Hell.
Easily, yes. I
yeah,
wondered
like
how the shorter format would go for Anime Hell. What was your impression of it, James?
I was thinking the same thing that certain presenters would obviously deal better with a longer format. Like Dave Merrill did another Anime Hell, and he definitely did quite well given he was given a half hour, and then like even the retrospective, and then the more educational panels. I'm thinking of the Samurai Ideology Bushido, and he even mentioned in his opening, he said, "It's very tough to do this in a half hour, but here we go."
Hmm.
And
So,
that was still a good panel for a half hour to
for a
get
half hour,
what he had
yes.
to get done.
Actually, if on that note, if you're going to ask me one thing that I really enjoyed watching, it was the panel after that. Japanese apocalypticism in anime, I thought was a really interesting panel because it had me thinking about how history, how such horrible points in Japanese history has had an effect on pop culture and fiction in Japan, especially in recent years or recent decades. So that particular panel was the one that caught my attention, and maybe at a point we'll elaborate on that a little more. If you're going to ask me at least one thing that caught my attention. I mean, when we look at the whole schedule, I mean, Veronica Taylor made her appearance again at an online convention. She seems to be doing a lot of them these days. But always charming to hear from. We did mention Anime Hell, and for what it's worth, I think might be worth asking Dave Merrill himself how he felt about doing the 30-minute format. So who knows? I think we'll have to ask him at some point whenever we run into him again. 404s, that was Friday. Saturday was obviously a little bit more packed. I missed most of it. I think I caught a little bit of the Wheel of Fortune game. That's why I had to mention the game shows a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how was that?
It only went so. It could only be so much. It was the first time I really stuck to watch a game show at Anime North in any
and it
form.
feels like they were trying to get participation from the chat, and that can be hit or miss.
Well, what was it? Did you see it? Did you see it, James?
Yeah.
I saw some of the game shows, but it felt like they were trying to get participation, stuff like that through the chat, and you can only do so much with that, but it is what it is. But it was still fun. They got across the spirit of what they were trying to do, and there's only so much you can do, right?
Yes. Actually, they did have an industry panel, and there's this long conversation about subscription services, which I know we'll touch on in the when we talk a little bit more Comic-Con as well. Manga Planet and Futakiya had a panel on Saturday afternoon, late Saturday afternoon, where they talked about their subscription services and some of the stuff they got. I didn't really know about Manga Planet. This tells me.
So what did you learn, Mike? Because I'd love to know, because there's so many of these weird things, either through browser or through app, that are trying to get either a manga subscription thing going or whatnot. And from what I've seen from their site, I don't see much on there. So I'd love to hear what you've thought of their panel or heard from it.
Well, the thing is, when you Google Manga Planet, it's not the easiest thing to find. I think it's like, well, we'll put the link. We'll put a link up. I didn't have a bad impression of it. They had me at least curious because of some of the titles they had, but I can't list them all off the top of my head. I know Kevin is better at that than I am, so I'll let him let it rip in a second. It was a nice little pre-recorded thing, just like everything else mentioned. I can't say anything really bad about them, but it was the first time I really heard any details of a subscription service. I think they go, what is it, $6.99 a month? But I think those are two separate services. There's Manga Planet and the Manga Planet, which is more across the board, but Futakiya is, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, that's more Fujoshi, almost borderline BL stuff, I guess. And that's a set. And those
it's where it's where they're going to put all the BL stuff. And those are two
separate services, and I think they're two separate services, right? So each one would be $6.99 a month, I believe. The only thing is when you try and find an app, they don't have an app. They're very much online, and once again, I will mention the link later. There's pedigree there when you look at who leads that project, and it was more of a conversational type panel with its head, and then a few other younger employees, and obviously they were promoting various titles they had picked up. I think it was a nice thing for them to have a presentation. I didn't really know about them, but I knew through friends they gained a little curiosity for the fact they were going to have a panel. Kevin, did you see the panel?
I watched the panel a day or two ago because I didn't watch any of this on the actual weekend. I was out for most of that weekend, but I tried to catch some panels afterwards. And so I did watch Manga Planet's panel. And I did not realize it was Hyoe Narita, who was the former executive vice president of Viz, who was involved with Manga Planet.
He's the head.
That's interesting, considering was it Dallas is the head of the manga go that other app and stuff like that. So
Yes.
it's kind of interesting how those have changed.
Yeah, formerly of Del Rey / Kodansha, Dallas Madel, right? Yeah.
We'll talk about him in just a few minutes. So, any titles that stuck out from their announcements that have your attention?
Sakigake Otokojuku.
Salaryman Kentaro, I think.
Yeah, Salaryman Kentaro was the one that stood out for me. I'm not sure if they announced it there or not, because the only one I saw was the
related to it, yes.
Piracy one.
So,
and Ginga Nagaraboshi Gin, which was a very popular Shonen Jump comic in the 80s, and it's a different kind of dog manga. It's not about cute dogs; it's about ferocious wolves and other dogs trying to survive in the wilderness.
Okay.
Yeah, and see, I was kind of, that one really intrigued me because I read one of the spin-off / sequel mangas, Ginga Densetsu Weed, or not read, I watched the anime back in 2005 for that. So I was like, oh wow, they picked that up. And I feel like I forgot the actual company that had those titles in Japan, but a few of those titles that they announced are former Shonen Jump titles. These were popular titles back in the 80s.
That's true. There's a lot of older titles that were mentioned in the pile. The thing is, they talked at length about getting these older titles and some of the complications in getting those licenses, I think. I remember the panel correctly. I mean, I was listening to it passively while playing Yakuza. Yakuza is going to be a running gag throughout the rest of it. That and Old Yeller, I think.
See, I could see myself subscribing for a couple months to read like Sakigake Otokojuku and maybe trying out some other stuff. Although the thing is that these are old titles that most of the manga fandom will not give a shit about. And I hate to say that. I hate saying that.
Thing, I think. I mean, in the aughts, I gave titles a shot that I know were commercial failures. Like Tokyo Pop gave a lot of chances to titles like Kindaichi and then Boys B. Those were two of my favorites, which I know never really got anywhere. And going to the Comic-Con panel, people mentioned sports manga still has yet to really find its footing. But go ahead.
Well, some sports manga have. The thing is that you need the female fan base to pull through to make it commercially successful.
Yuri on Ice, exception or rule? What do you think? Because I'm thinking in terms of its popularity here. Exception or rule?
Well, it helps that the show is good, but if not for the females who that show is targeted to, I don't know how well it would do otherwise.
Maybe exception then. But for other reasons.
The show itself is very good.
I believe that.
So it has that to go on as well.
Well, there isn't too much else to mention concerning Momiji's online experience. I can't say it. I can't say the acronym.
Moe.
I'm really holding off on saying the acronym myself. It's for what it was. It was simple, but it probably should have been more. I guess is that how you feel about it, Kevin?
Well, I think for a first try, I think it was fine. I think the scope and the size was suitable.
The thing is,
sure, being bigger would be nice, but I didn't expect it to be as big as, say, the AX one or the Otakon one.
It's Anime North.
Or what the Otakon one will be.
Yes.
But
Sorry.
it definitely had the feel of what you would expect if we went to a physical anime north, and it's for the fans, by the fans, as they've
And
always mentioned. And it
I
was
agree.
fun. They did have the retrospective, which I know Dave Merrill helped present at on the
which was
Friday, and
nice.
then they had Steve Bennett on the on the Saturday night that I caught that, and he had some good stories of Anime North Pass and why he kept coming back for so many years and stuff like that, saying the same thing, that it had that homey feel that you like. It's like you never left.
Uh, well, for what it's worth, the Twitch is still there. I think all the videos are still archived. We'll put a link up, and hopefully they're still there when if people ever link on them or click on them.
It was as of
So,
today. I was watching
it's
some
worth
stuff today.
going back to watch. I think which almost certainly I'll try to.
And they didn't get hit with anything for any any panelists or anyone show and stuff like that, because I remember even in the Bushido one they had some of the Last Samurai there, but luckily no one tried to
Well,
strike that down.
They were doing that for educational purposes.
Well, you never know, right? It's like they still do it, and then
You're
you have to
right.
go through the process, right? That's the biggest problem.
Algorithm. It's that algorithm. Okay, we got a couple more minutes. Name one thing. Let's talk one
Oh,
thing concerning Comic Con, because
yeah.
I saw the video. I saw the manga roundtable panel.
Why don't you guys? We can talk about that quickly. The one thing I'll mention very quickly is the Eisner Awards, which is the comic awards that
Okay.
they do. And yes, it did have some controversy because they were doing the voting online this year because of COVID, and there was an issue, so they had to re-vote all over again. So
Mhm.
who knows how that turned out? But usually, manga only wins usually in its category, which is best U.S. edition of an international material Asia award. And this year for that one, it was actually a tie. Cats of the Louvre by Matsumoto was tied in one with Witch
Oh,
Hat.
yeah. Taiyo
Correct.
Matsumoto, right?
And so
Hmm.
he won, and he was tied with Witch Hat Atelier, and that was done by Komomo Shirahama, and she's known for doing Marvel work and stuff like that too. So, but that one's a very different type of book. It's like very pastelly. It's about magic and them trying to be a magician and learn magic, even though they're not supposed to and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So those two won, and they're both interesting works. One, The Cats of the Louvre, is from Viz, and it's out, and then The Witch Hat is from Kodansha. But the one outside, and there has been some manga in different categories, but this is the first time I
Oh,
remember
this.
one actually winning, and that was Way of the House Husband from
Way of the
Viz.
House Husband. Yeah,
Won
I
in
remember hearing
the
that.
best the best humor publication category. And so,
He is the best human, though.
true, but it's also very humorful too. So, and I do agree that it was very funny trying to read that one. So I think that's a great pick for best humor category and stuff like that. And I can't remember what the other ones they went up against, but it's great to see manga win in other
I've been itching to
categories.
read that
Yeah,
for months.
everyone's talking about Way of the House Husband.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I think I mentioned it before, and it is a fun read if you haven't tried it out before.
Hmm. Okay. Well, do we want to mention anything else? Because I know we're pressed for time a little bit. Do we want
Well,
to
we
mention
had
anything?
the manga roundtable and stuff like that, and I think it was
I
interesting them talking about
Hmm.
well,
what they've
honking
been
their titles, of
seeing
course,
and about their works.
about the stuff they're publishing. But I think the takeaway I also had from it was sales have been okay during the pandemic. Probably at times, in depending on who you ask, there may have been the best run they've ever had in
Yeah,
terms of
Matt
sales.
Alt said he was talking to someone, an agent, that was saying that of all the categories, manga, at least at that point, was doing really well and was one of the few positive signs compared to the others. And others were talking about certain categories that were getting bumps at certain points, like cooking and other things, and then coloring books and stuff like that, because people need something to do. And they also talked about the digital and the physical. More people are getting into the digital on certain aspects, and the
Mm-hmm.
other thing of the international listings. I know Chavez was talking about that because remember, a lot of the times they're looking at just the American listings like Barnes and Nobles and stuff like that, but they were saying some of their international
Yeah.
listings they've been getting good numbers from that they didn't even think about that were keeping them above board. You know what I mean?
Well, in that panel, I heard a
Hmm.
name that we hadn't heard, or I hadn't heard for more than a decade, Dallas Mada, and now he heads a online subscription service, Mangamo. That's a name I hadn't heard in a very, very long time. So it was interesting to hear from him in any form.
Yeah, and
Like,
he's usually been at those panels too
yes,
at Comic Con.
I
So,
mean he said
but it's
that.
been a while because he said he was out of the game for a bit till they launched this app. So,
And and of course they announced a few of the titles they had acquired. Most intriguing of which, and maybe Mo will want to pay attention, they have the manga adaptation of Japan Sinks 2020, and that'll be on. That's going to be coming onto their service shortly, if not, or if it hasn't been there already.
well, they said what was it? They're on the
And it's clear
production
that,
committee, and
Well, that's right.
that supposedly they've been involved with that Netflix production stuff like that. So there's a lot going on with that.
Mhm. Go ahead, Kevin.
I was gonna say it's clear that his past with Del Rey / Kodansha is coming through because you do have several Kodansha titles on Mangamo. Like I believe Attack on
Okay,
Titan's on there,
good to have the Rolodex, dude. Good to have the
and
Rolodex. If people know what those are.
and hey, you have a top selling title there, which is bound to bring in some people. And obviously, because these apps are new, like they have to start somewhere.
Well,
But I'm curious as to whether or not uh, the other publishers, Japanese or English, will gravitate towards these apps through whatever negotiations, or if they'll just create their own. Because I feel like manga has always been very fragmented when it comes to like the platforms. Like everyone, I feel like would just want to have their own app, or will want to have their own magazine, or will want to have their own uh, way of distributing their works, which is unlike anime in the past, when at one point probably 80% of new anime were being streamed on
now we have
And
Crunchyroll.
then there are
Crunchyroll,
some
and then
crews.
Animation, and then to lesser degrees, High Dive and Netflix now.
Because because when I go on the manga subreddit, r/manga, every so often you'll see people saying, yeah, I would actually pay for this if there was just one site that would just have like all the manga, and it's just like, no, that's not
One
realistic.
site for everything. You don't have that in terms of streaming either, in terms of streaming TV and movies. So I would expect a few, more than a handful of services to offer that. And we're starting.
And I bet you a good chunk of those people wouldn't
That's
pay
the
for
other
it
side.
anyway.
Rose-colored eyes are saying, at least my rose-colored eyes, and they're not always there, but at least I'm starting to see names. So Mungo Planet, Mungo Mo. At least I'm starting to hear a few real subscription services, at least. Uh, at
Remember that
least.
Crunchyroll's still alive too, even though they forget to promote their manga section.
Mhm. Well, I
I
yes,
forgot about
they
it.
do. Yeah, like for me, I would have to dig around, but I don't give myself the time to dig around to see if what such services may exist. I've known they've existed personally. It's just that this is the first time I'm starting to hear names for myself, but without me having to really look. Like these names kind of basically fell into my lap, and maybe for me personally, that's worth something. But then you'll be more curious to see what else is out there. So I mean, with my own
I
personal time frame, I just have trouble looking to see what services are out there. I'm too busy actually enjoying stuff.
I wish Viz did one for
Well,
everything else
wouldn't
that
that
they
be
publish. Like they have their Shonen Jump one, but I would like to read more of their shoujo back catalog.
Yeah,
in
you
like
would think if they were going to
in like
do
a monthly
another one, the
subscription?
next one would be Shoujo Beat.
Mm-hmm. But what?
The issue. Sorry,
No,
finish,
that's what I was
James.
just saying. That would be this shoujo beat branding and stuff like that. That would be the next one you think they could do. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Go ahead.
It would require more legwork, I would imagine, because a lot of those shoujo titles are not from one publisher. Some are from Shogakukan, some are from Hakusensha, some are from Shueisha, and even though they're all kind of tied together in a sense, they're not actually. So then that
This
would
is like the
require
flip,
more legwork.
the other side of of Viz's structure. Remember where we said they had two major publishers involved in it back then.
Yeah, like
We thought it was a great thing, but now we're seeing, okay, maybe this might be a hindrance in terms of the way the business has changed now.
yeah, like Shueisha and Shugakukan, they would be fine because those are a part of the Viz family. But then, it's like as you said, Hakusensha is another thing altogether. So,
Mm-hmm.
but they're better off probably than other publishers if they were trying to get something going.
Well, if they wanted to do it, they don't do a subscription service though, do they?
It's just Shonen
Okay,
Jump where they do that.
but nowhere else really, and it would probably like you just think about the potential. That's all I could think about.
But as we know, Shonen Jump is the big thing that makes them the money and stuff like that. And I think I was looking at the recent thing for Crunchyroll, their most watched, what brings in the money for them. And it is those Shonen Jump titles and those Shonen titles and stuff like that that are the backbone of the catalog, keeping things moving forward. It isn't the new titles every season and stuff like that. There may be a few, but a lot of those are just a little something for everyone. It's the big ones that bring everyone in.
Mm.
Yeah, Black Clover, My Hero Academia,
Naruto,
One
yeah,
Piece.
still.
As I said, you just think about the potential. Okay, do we have a final thought? Because we got to close the segment and then we can take the break for a couple seconds.
I forgot to mention this earlier. The Isekai panel at Momiji's was really good.
As I said, we'll put a link. We'll put a link to the Twitch stream there, and we'll put a link to Comic-Con's panel.
That was clearly produced for YouTube. At least that's what I feel, because it was professionally edited.
Oh.
The Isekai panel.
Oh yeah.
Because they actually went into like the history of Isekai, how it became as big as it did today. They talked about a couple of specific titles, like very well researched, and the presenter was well spoken.
I think there were a
as well.
few, that had YouTube channels, because there was another one that had, and he might have done that one too, but I'm not sure. I can't remember. There was one from YouTube, and that was the fan presentation of Copa and how it will affect anime review channels.
Well, that
was an interesting one, just on YouTube in general and educating us.
Yes, that's Mega J Retro. He's
Correct.
a semi well known YouTube streamer as well. I've known that man for the better part of 20 years. We go way back. I'll tell you about that later.
Okay, yeah, because he did. That was a fantastic panel as well, and him educating the rest of us and how stuff from the States can affect all of us worldwide.
As I said,
and their businesses.
He's a very keen guy. Having known him for as long as I have, I'm not surprised he was able to come out with something that thoughtful. As I said, we'll put up the links to both of them in the show notes. So, but overall, it was worth the time if you had the time to watch them. And if you didn't, well, you'll have the chance still for a little while longer. Let's take the break. When we come back, well, let's talk more Yakuza. But we're going to take another angle on it. We're not going to talk about a game that's been out for 5 years, but we are going to talk about some interesting statements that its creator made earlier this week, among other things. That's when the Anime Roundtable continues in a couple seconds on the Six Talk Podcast Network. So the highlight for me of the Yakuza 0 game, I think for a lot of players or a lot of fans of that game, might actually be the cabaret minigame that happens. And maybe appropriately, you know what the theme song to the cabaret club game is called? And when you step inside the cabaret, you hear a song playing in the background. You know what the song is called out of all things?
Lay it on us.
Fake Love. I mean, it just probably encapsulates the whole hostess bar thing perfectly. I just thought I'd put that out there.
When I think fake love, I think of BTS.
Well, that...
Because they have a very popular song called Fake Love.
Oh, yeah, okay. I believe that,
too. There's some double entendres on both ends.
Oh boy.
Well, the real question, though, Mike, is when are we going to get to the next Yakuza game when you're going to talk about it? And is this going to be like a series of years down the line? We'll finally be at Yakuza 6.
Ooh, who knows which way that could go.
2023.
Let's get back into it. And the podcast now continues on this Friday evening, July 31st, 2020. Nicholas, Austin, Ing in conversation with you from the 6 Point Studio and parts of the GTA online via the Six Talk Podcast Network. Official podcast.
I just want to say one part of the GTA.
Yeah, one part. Yeah, specifically. As I mentioned earlier, there's a light at the end of the tunnel in playing Yakuza 0, and I've been playing it for the last month, just wanting to level up Kiryu and Majima. And I think I've maxed them out, so I'm ready to probably finish the game. I've actually held off on finishing the game today because I just didn't want to old yeller myself with whatever the ending could be. And no, please no spoilers on this, okay? I get it that I'm probably saying too much about a 5-year-old game, but Yakuza's creator kind of made some interesting comments earlier this week as we begin the bullet segment. This isn't really going to be a bullet segment, is it? Just go maybe one or two thoughts?
We'll see.
Okay. Well, let's see. Toshihiro Nagoshi, the executive director of the Yakuza games, had a really interesting thing to say about the recent Ghosts of Tsushima game that came out within the last... How long has that been out? A week? 2?
Yeah, about a week or two and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very new, and it was delayed, but it came out on like worldwide, of course.
It came out worldwide and it's gotten some amazing reviews.
And it's done by Sucker Punch, and it's they are known for Infamous and stuff like that. But this is very different to a degree from what they've done before. So they've done an incredible job from the people I've talked to. I haven't played it yet, but I'm waiting for it to go down in price. But it looks fantastic. And even across the pond in Japan, we've been hearing things just like we're going to talk about now.
Nagoshi just simply said, yeah, we were beaten. We in Japan were beaten. Of course we're losing. Honestly, I think that's a game that should be made in Japan. And you can tell, and he just kept going on and on about how the developers did their research, even if not everything in the game is accurate. But then again, there's
the other
always
thing is, remember, they're in Japan. They're owned by Sony, so they were able to get help from Japan studio and stuff like that on the research and that. So there definitely was a lot of help on that, and they were responsive to them and stuff like that. As they said at Sucker Punch, that they said, "Hey, can you help us out? We want to make this as truthful as we can in certain aspects," and they did.
Yeah, and the quality isn't lost on people really in the know in the industry.
And he talked about, too, the same one everyone else talked about, the Kurosawa mode and stuff like that, and that it wasn't just a black and white samurai movie. Like, they even matched it for how the old frames in the movies were and stuff like that. Like, everything was, like, put to pinpoint artisan detail and stuff like that.
So it isn't just an homage to the samurai. It might be an homage to the way it's been depicted in movies, too.
Yeah, no, they definitely said Kurosawa was someone they thought about and stuff like that. And the other key element I'm sure you were going to get to that Nagoshi talked about was the main character, because the main character, Jin, is a middle-aged guy. And he talked about, his quote was, "The protagonist isn't a particularly handsome lead, don't you think? At your typical Japanese company, if you showed concept art for a character like him, I don't think it would be approved. The marketing team," he continued, "would offer all this data stating why such a lead character was a bad idea, and that would be the end of a lead like Jin." Nagoshi thought it was amazing that such a protagonist was the lead character. All that money and development time being spent on a middle-aged dude, because remember, this is in the millions of dollars. He applauded the resolve to entrust things in such a character. From what Nagoshi said, it doesn't seem like that would be possible in Japan. Perhaps he thinks game companies would prefer a younger protagonist, which is certainly more common in Japanese games. And we can see that with what we've played with many different Japanese games over the years and stuff like that. Even what you would think of the AAA one, because they want to make it marketable, right? Or they want to make it into an anime or a manga or into another property or figures.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, James just basically dug into the article itself, but just the mere presence of the statement had me reflecting about how much game development has kind of come in the history of video games, really. In the early days, like when back in my day, video games was clear it was clearly a Japanese thing. And then like all games were developed there, just about everything was developed there, and then we were just like anime back then, we were eagerly waiting for a translation and then for it to be released to English speaking audiences, a lot of different games. And now in the last maybe 20 years, I suppose, since the PlayStation 2 era, or maybe a little sooner, Japan is, while very much the father or very much the home and originator of the video game industry as it became popular, in many respects, it's in terms of its development, it's sort of gotten overtaken. I mean, you start development of video games now has become a worldwide thing. You
And
have
we
different studios in Europe and North America, and now, and this statement by Nagoshi just basically, to me, is a reflection as to how game development has truly become a worldwide thing, and maybe at points even surpasses the way it would be in Japan.
similar to what we've seen before, like last decade and stuff like that, because it was end of the PS2 era, beginning of PS3 360 era, where we heard those comments from Kenji Inafune and stuff like that, and Capcom about how they were going to make games and change it to a more worldwide audience and stuff like that. And you saw stuff like Dead Rising and all that, that they weren't able to keep up with the tech arms race of everyone else in the West, as they said. And then you got more cinematic and more storytelling was going on in a lot of these games, and they weren't able to keep up on that end to go at those production values and stuff like that. And you can even see it in a game like this, because they poured so much into this, and Japan would have probably done a good job, but it's still, it wouldn't they wouldn't have had the money to make something as incredible as what they put into this.
Is it really a money thing? You really?
There's a
I
lot of
never
different
really.
things. There's also the tech too, because remember he talked about the motion capture and stuff like that too in the
Mhm.
article, and that was something too that he was impressed with the motion capture. And remember, a lot of them too, they do it in Japan now, but they're using a lot of the voice actors, their physical traits, and they're doing some of the motion capture too. You know what I mean? Like it isn't them just providing their voice for a lot of these games too
Oh
now.
yeah, I mean, it's their physical likeness too. It's
Hmm.
happening. That's become a bit of a thing, I suppose. But as I said, this Nagoshi's words caught my attention on a bunch of different angles. And you mentioned your angle, I mentioned mine. And take that for what it is. We'll put the article, people can judge for themselves if they haven't read it already, because it's Kotaku. Everybody reads. Enough people who care about it would have read Kotaku.
Well, that one, they were basing it off the interview and stuff like that, so it should be okay, but I know what you mean, so.
I'm pretty sure there's other ways we can read have done that. Maybe watching the interview itself. Well, I need a translation. Okay, but I don't know. Are either of you planning to play Ghost of Tsushima anytime soon?
Everyone, like, I watched some friends stream it, and it looks incredible. I'm definitely going to get it probably closer to the end of the year when we start seeing some of the sales, because there's so many things out there, right? And with the way the economy is, so I'm going to wait and then I'll spend it when it goes on sale. But it's still going to be fun when I do get to experience, and I'm going to be intrigued to compare it to was it Sekiko? You only live twice or only die twice or something like that. The one from
uh,
Activision, published by
okay.
Activision. It was from FromSoft.
Hmm. Kevin, you gonna try and give it a shot?
Never say never, but most likely no. And that's
Okay.
because I am now staring at my 3DS backlog that still needs to be played.
Now, how
And
many of those are Atlas games that they republished from DS? Because remember, they added content to a lot of those games, and those are meaty RPGs. Just me still trying to get through a few of them.
well, ever since SMT5 got announced, a lot of those have become tricky to find. So let's see. I'm looking at it right now. Professor Layton and which one is it? Oh, the Osron Legacy. I have to play Fire Emblem Awakening. I have to play Bravely Default, and if I like that enough, maybe I'll go through the pain of playing Bravely Second. I have to play Virtue's Last Reward. I have to play Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask.
So that
I
isn't too bad compared to if you were going through some of the Atlas stuff, because I went through some of those, and actually some of those though were fun just to go through again because they did add a lot of stuff. The one I still love playing and is one anyone should play on 3DS or if they have the DS copy is Radiant Historia. That is a fun
Oh, I
yeah.
RPG
still
to
have that
play.
too, actually.
Yeah,
I did
that if
rebuy
you
that.
had to choose one, I would tell you, yeah, to play through that. It's fun on a gameplay level, story level, everything else.
And I have Zero
I
Time Dilemma. I actually did finish Virtue's Last Reward. I need to finish Zero Time Dilemma, and I have not played through Pokemon Ultra Sun or Ultra Moon. Oh, this is gonna suck.
oh boy.
And I'm playing Shin Megami Tensei 4 right now, so that will probably last me until October.
Well, we'll see what happens. Yeah, they had that developer partner conference, which everyone got overhyped for, but that was great to see those announcements. Shin Megami Tensei 5 saying simultaneous world release next year, hopefully, fingers crossed, because that was one of the ones they showed when they announced the Switch, and that was just,
Mm,
and we actually, so hopefully that works out, because you never know, right? They've been working on it for so long,
man.
but it took them a long time to get through to 4. But the other one that was interesting is they did a remaster for Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne,
Okay.
and that is going to come out in the fall for Japan, and then next year in the spring for us.
Okay.
So that'll be a nice appetizer for people. So are you thinking that, given the comments on all that, Mike, you're thinking of maybe getting Ghosts of Tsushima, maybe?
I'm still playing Yakuza 0, and then there's still the others to play.
Yeah, he has to play through Yakuza 1 through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the new one.
Which is what's the new one called? Way of the Dragon, I believe, or something.
Or
Yes,
Like a
but that
Dragon or
one,
something.
Like a Dragon. That's it.
like a drink.
Like a
But
Dragon.
the interesting thing is they kept on talking about the RPG elements and stuff like that and how it's going to be different to play compared to all the others. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when it finally comes out.
Mhm. Well, let me just quickly say about the whole Yakuza, having played it and then learning a few more things about the PS4. I discovered, like, I made my own personal discovery. I finally discovered PS4 remote on my tablets, phones, and computers. So now I can hack into it remotely. And in trying it for the first time and being able to connect my controller to it, it made me think about basically how something like that ended up winding down the handheld industry. Like how the fact that you can play your console games on your tablet, on your iPad, on your phones, basically wound down the DS and the Vita.
And that started with them doing the streaming and doing that just between the PS4 and the PS3 and the Vita. That's
Mm-hmm.
how it started. So it's
So we were on a
definitely
crazy boat.
developed, as you said, and it's worked out fine for you streaming between the devices, because I know at the beginning people
There's still
weren't
some
sure how that
jag.
was going to play out.
Yeah, no, there were some jaggies. I mean, it cut every so often, but overall the experience wasn't bad. It wasn't bad
Okay.
at all. So I found it really curious. And as I said, I'm kind of old school, so this is more of a recent discovery for myself. Okay, got only maybe about 20 minutes to go here, I think, before we have to really cut off. James, you mentioned Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll is going to remove 77 Sentai titles, and that's this weekend.
Yep.
Is there something we have to mention
Uh,
concerning that? Because that's a very curious
We kept on
story.
talking about how Sentai people are wondering what's going on with them, because they seem to be losing the arms race against Crunchyroll and Funimation with their big parent companies backing them, and they've only gotten like those few millions of dollars that were invested by Cool Japan. So they're either going to have to rethink and say, okay, can we go after some of those Amazon shows? But those ones they don't aren't able to get the streaming rights for, which are the big thing now. They can only get those physical rights. And
Hmm.
so they're getting the scraps of whatever's left over. Like there was only
Like
two shows they got this season. One was one they already had been doing before, and one was Peter Grill, and it was just shorts.
that's
Last year
deeply
was
concerning.
Mhm.
last year the only one. Sorry, not last year. I mean last season. The only one they got was the co-production between Toei Japan and Saudi Arabia, our good friend MBS, and folklore stories. And I'm not sure how that would play a lot of other places. I don't think that's the one MBS thinks is going to be a gateway to the rest of the world for Japanese animation. But anyway.
So James, you're telling me in the last 6 months they only acquired 3 shows.
Yeah, there isn't really, they haven't gotten many. Like their last big binge was last fall where they got more than maybe 5 shows, but they haven't really been getting much. Like Funimation has gotten most of the shows for the past 2 seasons, and then the rest went to Crunchyroll, and then whatever scraps were left over, if they could get them, then Sentai might get a few, like one or two. Like, so that is concerning. And
Would
then
you say? Sorry, finish.
but the other thing where this started was that before this, they did their announcements for their October slate, and their October slate for releases for Blu-ray was all re-releases, not a single new one. But they are doing
Mm,
dubs of old catalog stuff, so they have now are going to release in October Shirobako, but it's now going to have an English dub. And that's one I've always been thinking about getting, because it's looking at the Japanese animation industry and stuff like that, and the inner workings and stuff like that, but in a more fun, down to earth way. And people have always raved about. But the rest of it is stuff they've already done before, like Punchline, Najima. Is it wrong to try and pick up girls in a dungeon? Season 2, EF, both seasons. Beautiful Bones, which they had already released, and Akame ga Kill. Now, two of them are steelbooks, and they have been doing that for re-releases, but it's like, I mean, you're only going to get so many new people buying these titles. And then that
ooh.
led into early this morning where they said 77 titles from Sentai Filmworks are going to be taken off Crunchyroll. And the big thing also for that is they said August 1st. So they only gave 2 days notice. Well, think about that, how
Oh.
we talk
It's
about.
like as I said, it's a
So how
mind.
are you going to watch all those series if you want to watch some of them in 2 days or less than
This
2 days?
this is the thing about being the minnow.
And the other
Being our
thing
minnow.
that was funny, today I got an email from
Mhm.
Sentai, and we were talking about online conventions and how Sentai had been absent at a lot of these online events and stuff like that. Now, they've only done so many panels at so many conventions. They're definitely always at AX, but they weren't at the AX online event. So on August 26th, Sentai is going to have their own Sentai at Home event. And they said, join us for an online event full of special guests, industry news announcements, giveaways, and lots more. So you never know. Maybe they have something, but a lot of us, given the other announcements, we aren't too optimistic. Let's put it that way. Like, they might have to look at other things, like similar to how Discotheque has been doing it, and maybe look at certain older shows or maybe some back catalog stuff and see if they can get some of that, and they'll also be able to get the streaming rights. But the
Jeez.
key thing too is they
And
were
finish this
trying to
thought.
do SD on Blu-ray, right? Because
Mm.
Discotheque was the only one doing that one, and Justin Zavakis said how hard it was to kind of get to that point because there's a lot of hurdles behind it. And supposedly, I have one of the SD Blu-rays from Sentai, but a lot of people said the quality wasn't quite there, to put it lightly. And even Justin Savakis admitted that and said, it's like, I'll help you guys, like, iron out these details, but they just didn't seem to, it fell on deaf ears, and all the releases that they've had for SD on Blu-ray haven't been the greatest, but they haven't released one of those SD on Blu-rays in over a year. So it's hard to say if they don't have HD material, does that mean they're not going to go after those now because they're not doing SD on Blu-ray? And they said they're never doing any DVD releases like a lot of other companies because DVD is dead. You're just
Yeah.
not getting the sales.
Hmm. I don't know what to say now. We'll just have to see how this, how Sentai's next little bit plays out. That's about the only thing that comes to mind.
Well, it's
And there's
been an
maybe,
interesting history, as we said, because remember they were the big boys back when they were ADV and stuff like that, and they tried to have their home run. I forget who it was, the Japanese company. They tried to
Sojitz.
team. Yep,
Sojitz. Yeah,
Sojitz.
right.
They
There's a
tried to
name.
team with them, and then that unfortunately didn't work. And Sojitz decided, you know what, we're gonna pull out, destroy you guys, and then take our titles to Funimation. And so that left
Downfall.
them high and dry, and then they had to reorganize, remember? But it was still, streaming hadn't taken off with Crunchyroll and stuff like that. So they were still able to build up and get those new shows, but streaming definitely changed the game and stuff like that. Even with them having their own platform with High Dive and stuff like that, it's
Hmm.
still not as big as the big players and stuff like that. So it's kind of too little too late in a way, I feel.
Okay.
And the other
Yeah,
thing is they just weren't
Last
able to make those deals the other guys were able to make, like Funimation being able to say, okay, they went to Navarre. Then he had the billionaires, and then Gen was able to play off Universal and Sony and get the Sony money. So that's big backing. And Crunchyroll was able to get investment bankers, which then turned into Warner. And so
just
once
laughing
you
his
get
way to his golden mansion.
Oh boy.
But once you
Anyway,
get those big backers, right, it's like you're able and to get all those bigger, newer shows. So
It
they're
makes
gonna
me
have to
wonder
find a
how.
way to get some. They can still get some newer shows, but they got to supplement those with maybe some older catalogs, and then figure out other ways to get, if they want just physical, some of the stuff from either Amazon or Netflix. But the problem is they won't have the streaming rights, which, as we said, has become so important now, right? Because that's where a lot of
Yes,
people
the
are.
business. It's just the
and
business.
and I wonder how much of it is because of money, and then how much of it is because of the strength of the relationship, or the strength of prior relationships, or the lack thereof.
Uh-huh. Oh
And
boy.
that's interesting because they've definitely been in the market, and people in Japan definitely know John Leifer and stuff like that. And then they made the partnership, and Cool Japan owns a bit of them. So you'd think that would open a few doors, but it's kind of hard when you're going against two Goliaths, as we said, right? So.
Yeah,
Right.
when they just dump truck a bunch of money in front of your door, how can you say no?
And the other thing is we've seen the co-productions too, like Netflix is doing their thing, and so is Crunchyroll is investing in the actual production committees and stuff like that too, and I'm not sure they have the money to do that either.
Mm.
They had it in the
That's it.
past.
Well, who
No, they
knows?
definitely did it before and stuff like that with Samurai Gun and other things, but
Samurai
Japanese
gun.
waited. That I know that's the last one I remember, but anyway.
Oh man.
Oh man. Anyway, as I said, let's just see how the next little bit goes for Sentai, but it's tough to watch. Okay. Before we go tonight, we want to at least mention once again a little bit about what we've been watching or playing or reading. Obviously, some of us have done that en masse already, but I asked Kevin and James and Mohammed, although you already know what his answer is, if there's one thing you would like to at least say you're reading and go to bat for, or watching and go to bat for, say it here, and I'll give you a minute to do so. So, does anyone, Kevin, James, do you want to say anything? Just one thing you're watching or reading that you'd like to recommend right now?
I hear you'd like us to play some more Yakuza, right, Mike?
No, I'm not. No, my title won't be Yakuza though. The thing that caught my attention won't be Yakuza this time around. I promise.
Well, it was funny.
One
I
title,
was
and I'll give
watching
you
a
a
classic over the past few weeks actually, since we did the last recording, and that was going into the discotheque library because I had the fourth box set of Lupin the Third Part 2. And so I was
Okay.
going through that.
Oh.
And the key thing about this last collection, because we finally got it all on disc and that, is they have the 2 Miyazaki episodes and they have the dub that Streamline did for those 2 Miyazaki episodes. And it's just interesting to cap off with those Miyazaki episodes because it's the last episode 155 Miyazaki did, and 145. And he isn't credited, but you can definitely tell he helmed those two because the quality just jumps incredibly. And you're just like, what the heck am I watching? Because you even notice it now. But it was an interesting experience going through and watching those two, and they actually had some commentaries on them, and just seeing that he was nurturing those talent there at the time and stuff like that, and how he complained, and he's complained in some of the essays he wrote in some of the books and things, interviews he's done, saying that
Interesting.
it was through hell that he was doing that in 1980, doing those 2 episodes. But you're like, he didn't have to do that. He could have done like maybe just a bit more quality or same quality as the other episodes. But no, he went like full on film quality.
Yeah.
And there were so many more frames, so many more things going on in those 2 episodes that you're just like, holy smokes, the man just, the quality gauge was off the charts, that he was running himself ragged along with the crew. But if you're an animation fan, as they said, always
Basically,
watching
a bit of
Lupin
a
is always
history
a
lesson.
good thing, wherever you want to start, whether it's the specials, the movies, or check out any of the TV series.
Basically, a bit of a history lesson here.
Yeah, but that one's a fun one because those were done after Cagliostro and stuff like that. Because remember, Cagliostro didn't do so well, remember?
At the time.
And so it was like the long burning thing. Like we always are like, oh, Cagliostro, everyone knows that and everything's great and stuff like that. But originally it was a bust. And so to make up for that, that's why he did these 2 episodes on Part 2.
Okay, Kevin, one title. Just go to bat for one title for a minute.
Okay. My initial pick I will withhold for the time being. Instead, I'm going to go with something that I had to read in a hurry, and that is Saikano. So, Viz put out this manga, yes, going pretty far back, early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken.
The early aughts, right? And they only released that one edition. They never re-released it, I don't think.
No.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And so I read volume 1 and I think volume 2 back in high school. So we're talking like 13, 14, 15 years ago. And I have a friend in high school who I still talk to every now and then. That was one of his favorite manga, and he tried to get me to watch it or read it, and I never did. But maybe several years ago I did buy the manga. I found it for a good price. And last week I had an opportunity to actually sell the manga, and I decided to capitalize on that. And so I had 2 days to read all of Saikano.
The good thing is it's not that long of a manga. I think it's like 7 volumes or so.
You're correct. It is 7 volumes. Granted, volumes 6 and 7 are a little longer, or a little thicker, but anyway, part of the reason why I never got around to reading it was because I didn't want to put myself into a depressive mindset because when your girlfriend is essentially the Japanese army's only chance of winning.
You're saying we should not use the thing of saying girlfriend becomes military badass to save all of Japan?
No.
No.
This is not Girls in Panzer. This is not like any of those moe kind of shows. This is about a boy and a girl who fell in love, and early in their relationship, he discovers that she is the ultimate weapon. And how do I put this? As she starts to lose her humanity throughout the course of the manga, and you really see these characters suffer, sometimes at the expense of others. And you know what? Sometimes they don't make the best decisions, but these are high schoolers. What do you expect? And in the end, I feel like I kind of went through that roller coaster ride thinking like, yeah, you know what? This was great. This was really well executed. And I feel like now it's just lost to time because while the anime has been relicensed by Sentai Filmworks as She the Ultimate Weapon, Viz no longer has the manga anymore. There's no mention of it on their website. And the seller, the person who I sold it to, sorry, I'm the seller, the person who I sold it to also mentioned this, and she was elated that like someone else could share that feeling of how wonderful it was. I hope it comes back out at some point, but I don't think it's that likely.
Well, it's still a good series and stuff like that, and that was one of the few ones the mangaka I believe had come out from him, and he has a very distinct manga style and stuff like that, and it definitely works with the more realistic interpretations with that one and his previous work, which I think was Ihito, which is more of a slice of life, this go-lucky guy that is basically working as a salaryman and stuff like that.
Interesting. No, I mean, we're talking like a key title from roughly 15 years ago. Maybe a little more, but it was a big one back then.
Yeah, I would say it was one of the more popular titles back in the early 2000s. But no one really talks about it anymore.
And it's interesting because Viz has rights for everything on that one because, that was a Shukaku-kan or Shueisha title.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll try and keep mine rather quick. When we did the Miyazaki digest more than a month ago, when Jesse Betteridge came on the show from Zen in Canada, just before we went on the air, he made a recommendation to me personally. And that recommendation was Wave Listen to Me, the anime, based on Hiroaki Samura's currently running manga. He recommended that. It was only streaming exclusively on Funimation here. And I had a free Funimation Premium Pass for 2 months. And I got around to watching it in the final week of my free trial. And I think for the first time in a long time, I found myself mini binging, I guess, so to speak, episodes. You see, I was watching like 2, 3, 4 episodes a day. And I finished it just before the pass expired. It was a fun series to watch. It was.
I think you could still watch it after your pass expired, Mike, so you would have been okay.
And just to be sure, although Jesse also gave me a warning that they might be clamping. I may not have had that option if I was just a free member. But
Yeah, no, certain ones, but I think a week after, then it goes to free users and stuff like that. But for the last season and this season, they haven't had any ads for the free users for some
okay,
people.
for some people.
Huh.
But I will say I've never read Blade of the Immortal. I know Samura is known for that. That's his more popular title right now.
And for
The
his
And
most
stylish
popular title.
artwork and stuff like that too, of course,
and
which
I
is
know
there
that's a
too.
joke. I know that one of the long running jokes about the manga and Samura's comments on the manga to Wave Listen to Me is that he's made the promise not to kill anybody. Although,
Yeah, no, I remember that joke. It was
it's a
funny.
good joke, and it's a good joke, especially when you think of the main character Minari, because she looks like she is prepared to kill somebody.
Yeah,
Oh,
and you think of the storylines too, right?
it's
There's that to think about too. Is a couple of the storylines, and you're like, it's amazing that someone hasn't died yet, and that's
yeah,
the only way I can say
that's
without spoiling.
that's pretty accurate, actually.
Hey, Mike,
Yeah, just quickly. Yeah.
would you say there's any situations of misogyny in that show? Because I heard that there may have been a couple scenes like that where it kind of leans in that direction.
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that
That,
far either.
yeah,
I could
I can say
see
that.
maybe where someone
It
might
could
take
happen,
it the
but
wrong way, but I don't feel like it. You know what I mean?
but we're just guys. That's the thing. Maybe I'd have to ask get another opinion on that.
I heard
And
about this in another podcast, so I'd have to go back and listen to it. But
Okay.
and some of
when that was brought up, I was like, oh, okay.
Some
I
of
mean,
it is
honestly,
maybe the setup too, right, Mike? How
mhm.
the basic setup is she is at a bar, she's drinking with this
She
guy and
goes on
stuff like that, talking about her former
yeah,
boyfriend that
drunken
is
rant,
an
and then
asshole, and basically
having it
it. Go ahead.
recorded without her knowledge. But then she, in that drunken stupor, gave her permission to have it aired, and sure enough, it was aired. But
Yeah,
somehow it
by the
leads to a
guy.
new gig on radio.
And then she's listening to it while she's at the restaurant she works at, and so you can kind of see how that would be perceived the wrong way, but. And then he's like basically forcing her to do this, and then she's just still going along with it, doing
And
this radio gig as a side gig.
it has a lot of really funny moments. So it's a high recommendation. But one thing that also appeals to me about it and has my attention is, off the top of your head, can you think of an anime or manga wholly set in Sapporo? Because Sapporo is so well depicted in the anime. Like I recognized a few of the landmarks just because I've seen pictures of it in other shows and documentaries.
That thought crossed my mind too when I heard it was based in
So I
Sapporo.
can't think of one right
Yeah,
now.
that was a big thing. Like we think of Hokkaido, but they
Really show
never.
it.
It's like they may be in Sapporo, but they always say Hokkaido. But a lot of them, yeah, you can't think of many where it's like
Mhm.
Sapporo. You know
Yeah,
what I
and
mean?
I mean, all other major cities.
And takes advantage of all those
Sure.
landmarks, as we said, that we can
And
recognize.
it's so well done, and it sold me on the manga. But I'll wait for the sales. I don't know what else to say about it aside from it's a worthwhile watch, and in many respects, as people who do at least radio, who do podcasts, there's a certain degree of relatability to it. At least I could relate somewhat in some respects. Not to say any of those
That's
situations have
that,
actually happened, but just some of the little those details, I somehow could identify with in some form.
the radio angle was why I
Oh,
wanted to
same
read or
thing.
watch it.
And and it kind of comes to my last point about it. It's talk radio in Japan is still a thing. The radio drama is, as far as I know, still a thing. When we think of radio here, it's like if it's talk, it's news talk or sports talk, but there's not really general interest stuff like CBC. But something like CBC radio is you probably hear a little bit more of in Japan. So that type of radio is still a thing there, and it's sort of a shame because, well, I guess personally I think it's a shame because I'm sort of into that myself. So there's a thought for it there. And as I said, high recommendation. If you can check out the anime on Funimation in whatever form, if you have the subscription or not. I think it was like it's very popular. I think it's quite popular right now, but but the best I could do is just add my name to the pile. If you get the chance to watch it, the first season, and I don't know if it's going to continue, but it's 12 episodes and it's a really worthwhile watch.
And if you want to continue, you can always read the series from Kodansha USA, either in print or digitally, and they're doing the simul release for the chapters as well.
So give that a look.
So you can keep up to date.
Anyway, that's my recommendation for one title. And we're almost done, but I do want to make one final thought or give one final recommendation for this episode. About 2 years ago, I mentioned in On My Mind about a documentary on NHK World about a man who wanted to do a kimono project where he depicted every country in the world. This was in the run-up to the Tokyo Olympics. He wanted to do a kimono depicting every country in the world or every country participating in the Olympics. He called it the One World Kimono Project. It was supposed to have been completed before the Tokyo Olympics, as mentioned before. Obviously, that hasn't happened because, just like everything else, COVID hit. But last Friday, July 24th, when the Olympics was supposed to have begun, the One World Kimono Project announced its completion and released a YouTube video depicting all of the kimonos they made. It's a 14-minute video. I know for those in the know, I know that Anime North fans, I know that the people who did the kimono workshops at Anime North, this has been a thing they had been keeping up with. So that would be big news in the kimono fan community here in North America. So we'll put up a link in the show notes to the YouTube video announcing the completion of the project. And I think NHK still has the VOD of the original documentary. And if you ever get the chance to see that, because I'm told that's set to be taken off their website sometime in September, if you get the chance to see that, that is a fun watch, especially since one of the stories they tell in that documentary is about the Canadian kimono, or more specifically, the obi sash that went into the Canadian kimono. So, once again, a worthwhile watch. Anyway, that's it. That's all we got for this episode. Thanks for listening. Join us again for another edition of the Anime Roundtable.